Alright, so my name is Jakub Janda, I'm here from the European Values think tank, and with here is Mr. Krisztian Szabados. Mr. Szabados, thank you for accepting our invitation. And please, could you introduce yourself in a few sentences?
I'm Krisztian Szabados, founder of Political Capital. It's a Budapest-based think tank which focuses on political analysis, right-wing extremism researches, and political risk analysis.
Thank you very much. And in recent days there have been a lot of talks about Hungary in connection with the law which should, let's say, abandon the political parties from using their pre-electoral, let's say, adverts on some televisions and online, on the internet as well. Could you talk about it?
Yes, this contradictory proposal comes from a government which enjoys a two-thirds majority support in the parliament, and the Hungarian election law is it's under the two-thirds law, which means you need a two-thirds majority to amend this law. The current government has been trying to put technical obstacles to opposition parties and new parties to run on elections since the first moment they come to power. They started with gerrymandering the electorate boundaries, and then came the media law, and now we have the election law. This law has several faults, and the opposition part, not just opposition parties, but also think tanks, civic organizations criticize it very heavily.
I'm sorry, may I ask, what about the EU's stand on that? Is there any clear one?
Not yet, but we expect that the European Union will criticize it after the law is accepted in the Parliament. So. The main characteristics of this law is what you mentioned, the advertising part, but it also has other aspects. For example, it prevents civic organizations to run on elections. Only political parties can run on election, and it is a direct reaction to the fact that the former Prime Minister, Mr. Orban,
the socialist one, is it right?
He was a caretaker. He was not a Socialist Party member, but he was supported by the Socialist and Liberal faction in the Parliament before 2010. And he created a new civic movement and his goal, openly declared goal, is to replace the current regime. And he created this civic movement, civic organization, and as a response, the current government and the current majority in the parliament wants to accept this amendment in the election law that civic organizations can't run on elections. This is a very, how should I say, not elegant reaction to this to the former Prime Minister's political initiative. The second issue is the advertising. The reason why the main governing party wants to curb advertising is twofold. The first one is that they don't like political discussions, political discourse in the mainstream media. In the last 2 years, the two most important commercial TV channels' news program didn't cover politics at all. So politics was out of news programs, and this was this was to help the government, because if people talk about politics, of course they talk about all problems.
So was it a censorship then?
It's not. It's a self-censorship. These TV channels were afraid that the government would seize the contract and the broadcasting contract with them. So this is why they apply this kind of self-censorship. Of course, the public broadcasting channels, the TV and the radio channels, are completely controlled by the main governing party, and also the main governing party's business circles bought up several media outlets in Hungary. So we estimate at Political Capital that some 80% of the Hungarian media is directly or indirectly controlled by the current government. And it seems that by using the election law, the government tries to curb the information flow of political parties and political opponents. And also, to add this, almost all billboard companies in Hungary are owned by one person who belongs to the Mr. Orban, the Prime Minister's business circles.
So it's a monopoly then?
Practically, it's becoming a monopoly. One thing they couldn't stop is Facebook. So practically now, if you want to get reliable information from Hungary, you have to do Facebook. So Mark Zuckerberg is the foundation of democracy in Hungary.
All right, and is there anything that the opposition or the civic party, civic leaders could do against the law? Are there any instruments they could apply, or is there just demonstrations?
Besides creating memes on Facebook, they can't do nothing. They can't do nothing because they have not enough MPs in the parliament. They can voice their negative attitude towards this, but there are very few opposition media in Hungary anymore, and they don't get through to they can't reach as many people as in a normal democracy they could. But as I said, even supporters of Fidesz, the main governing party, the majority of them don't agree with this amendment of the election law, but the government seems not to care.
So you think that it will be passed, right? So it will come into
Definitely. It will pass the parliament, but of course there are loads of amendments to the original bill, and we will have to wait and see what's going to happen, because I presume that in the last minute they will make some changes. And of course we think that this is not the final version of the election law, because before the election I'm pretty sure that Fidesz will amend again this election law to favor the main governing party.
And are there any instruments that could be posed on from the European level? Because as far as I know, there's been a strong criticism against Mr. Orban's, let's say, steps in, let's say, in the fiscal era or in the fiscal way, but not really in the political way, as far as I know. Are there any? There might be criticism, but are there any tools that the EU can pose on Hungary for that?
Actually, it did happen earlier in the case of the media law, which generated a huge criticism in Western media, and the Western media practically forced the European Commission to express its criticism towards the Hungarian government, and the Hungarian government had to change and amend the media law in a way to promote more freedom of speech in Hungary. So I expect that after this election law, the European Commission and the European Union will criticize the Hungarian government again. But we won't see at this stage, we can't see at this stage whether it will be successful or not. Because in some cases we experienced that the European Commission could intervene.
By some sanctions? Or just...
By the threats of sanctions. It really works. But in other cases the Prime Minister didn't give in.
As far as I know, he's a member of EPP, European People's Party, as well.
Yes.
Do you think does it influence him as well, because he's on the same board as Angela Merkel or José Manuel Barroso? Is there any influence of that?
What we see is that the European People's Party is not homogeneously behind Mr. Orban. Of course, Fidesz is a very strong party inside the EPP. So and it's politics. So of course the European People's Party is interested in having a strong partner within its ranks, and of course they don't went as far as they could. But we know that some members of the EPP are not really fond of what Mr. Orban is doing, and we know that the German-Hungarian relationship is very tense right now, and it seems that Germany has real influence on the Prime Minister, because we can talk about only the Prime Minister because he decides on everything in Hungary right now. It's a very centralized policy-making system in Hungary. So practically, there are very few people who can really influence the Prime Minister, and it's Angela Merkel one of them.
All right, that's pretty good. And could we go through some of the argumentation of Mr. Orban? Why or of his party, Fidesz? Why is it forcing the election law, for example, as well? What's the argumentation behind coming from this?
There is no argumentation.
Really?
No. They say that this system exists in other countries. Actually, this system does not exist anywhere unless, I think, Belize. This is the only country where the registration system is like this. One key point of the EU election system is the registration of voters, But it does exist in the United States, but in the United States there is no registration of citizens, so this is why the registration is necessary during elections. And in the United States you can even register yourself on the day of the election. In Hungary the registration will start next September and end 2 weeks before the election day. So practically, you know, as you understand politics very well, many people decide in the last 2 weeks of the campaign whether they go and vote or not, or which party they vote for. And this is a clear aim to
cut off
close out these people who tend to vote against the incumbent government. This is a clear aim to close these people out. And the official argumentation of the government is that they don't want to give the right of vote to those voters who are not prepared, who don't understand politics well, who don't follow politics well, but they decided last minute by their emotions.
So they're trying to ease the scope or get it narrower.
Yes,
right?
We think at Political Capital that it is really a kind of curb on the basic law of vote. So I think this is against European values. So this is why I'm pretty sure that the European Commission will criticize the election law.
And might also work that this law might force the society to get polarized as well. So the opposition leaders has to, let's say, get really strongly and reach out for their voters. And let's say, hey, you know, you have to register right now. So it might polarize the election system or the election groups, I would say.
It's not polarizing the election system. We will have 2 campaigns basically. The first campaign will be about the registration, which will start next September, and of course we will have the election campaign. It has financial burdens for the opposition parties, which are very poor, because all the money, including corruption money, goes to the political party, and they can finance the campaign easily. Also, what we think and what we can expect is that the government will advertise itself, the main political party will advertise itself not as a party, but they will put out government ads on billboards, TV spots, radio spots, and they created several civic movements, artificial civic movements, which promote the government. So these organizations are free to advertise. So what we expect is that the Fidesz will finance these civic organizations. They will have a lavish of money, and they will be able to advertise and promote the government in the election campaign, while the opposition parties will have no power to do this, and as political parties they won't be able to do this.
And might the opposition parties or civic movements get some outside sourcing? Because I can imagine, for example, in Slovakia in the 90s, when there was a strong man ruling the country, the opposition got really strong funding, let's say, from the United States, from the support of democratic system and so-called.
Some NGOs receive fundings from abroad. There are no real and reliable information on foreign support for the opposition party.
This is legal, right? In Hungary?
There are legal ways to do it, but unfortunately in Hungary the party financing system is completely forced to be illegal. Because according to the election law, the party financing law, you are allowed to spend a certain amount of money on the campaign, but that amount is not enough for nothing.
So there are strong limits, and
they don't allow. Also, if there are ways to collect private money, private fundings, but if you give your name as a founder of a certain party, you are risking having the current government's regime on your neck, and this is how should I say, very risky for private people.
So I can imagine that some, let's say, US support or some international support in the form of funding to the opposition parties can be provided, but the government party might, let's say, abuse them or point them, as you know, as it happened in Russia, when the civic parties or the NGOs had to declare them as being sponsored by a foreign agent, so being a foreign agent. So it might happen as well in Hungary, right?
Not exactly. I think if foreign money comes to opposition parties, that might come only in illegal forms or informal forms.
So the government can sue it.
But of course, they can't sue it because you can't trace it. This is the problem in the Hungarian party financing system, that it's fully based on corruption. I give you some numbers. Officially, you can spend €1 million on a general election campaign
for the whole country.
For a national campaign, approximately €1 million, a bit more. But typically, political parties spend 10 times as much, minimum 10 times as much. So practically, it seems that 90% of campaign financing comes from corruption money. And this is now in Hungary, this is the #1 problem, that the election system forces political parties to be corrupt. And the current government was very smart at building up a huge corruption system in the last 2 years. And practically this governing party has enormous amount of money to run any kind of campaigns in 2014.
And at the end of our interview, could you just go through what political capital does? What's your role in the Hungarian system, or how do you pursue the role of your capital?
Well, when we established with my friend political capital in 2001, we wanted to bring some fresh air to political analysis in Hungary, because it was ruled by some academic people, and it was a bit boring. So we wanted to bring in some fresh air, and since then political capital has become a kind of the good example of how a think tank should be built up in Hungary, and many companies now follow us. So I'm very happy to see that think tanks are flourishing in Hungary. Of course, financing it's a bit difficult. Before the crisis, it was easy because we could manage to finance it through our other companies' profits, but now we are dependent on EU funds mostly, and of course what we do is, and what we are very proud of, is the research program that we launched in 2006 to better understand right-wing extremism in Hungary. And we have a very good program, research program on this, and we have been doing this for 6 years now, so we have loads of data about the Hungarian far right, and this is very important and very vital for the survival of Hungarian democracy, to understand why the far right extremism is growing in Hungary.
And are you connected or working together with some party in the Hungarian political system? Are you independent at all?
We say that we are independent from parties, but not independent from values.
Right.
So we believe in liberal democracy and market economy. So we promote these ideas, but financially we want to be completely independent, and of course we help political parties if they need us. For example, we are all researchers on the far-right extremist movements in Hungary, and these are very useful for political parties as well. In some specialized policy issues like education, economic policy, fiscal policy, we analyze and we share these knowledge with political parties, but we don't affiliate ourselves to any political parties.
And the last question, do you feel somehow persecuted by the current government if you did something against the government in the past? I'm just thinking about it, if you are feeling some pressure from the government sometimes as a think tank.
Political capital?
Yes, as a think tank.
We have, it's very interesting because the government doesn't like independent think tanks.
That's what I'm talking about.
But our relationship to the government is, I would say, through informal channels, it's very good. On formal level, it's nothing. It does not exist. So we don't communicate through formal channels. We heavily criticize the government on several issues, policy issues, especially economic policy or fiscal policy, or the election law or the media law. We criticize the government, but otherwise we didn't have it. Of course, there are some rumors that from time to time it comes up that the government tries to threaten independent think tanks, but it's not serious and not, I wouldn't exaggerate.
All right, so thank you very much for your time. I think it was a great interview. Thank you. Thank you. So I'll just take it off.
Good, so Gangnam Style is out.
Yeah, we might do the Gangnam Style over here.